It's an entirely different Collingwood these days, Caro. We saw Jeremy Howe's comments there. Maynard was pretty vocal as well. And then we saw a lot of reflective stories on the weekend. Jeff Brown, before he went into hospital, we wish him well, did the rounds. We've seen some of the key figures talk. A lot of, sort of stories you'd expect to see perhaps after September and not before. A changing of the guard, a very open club. What's your take on this?
Well, it was interesting that Eddie Maguire wasn't quoted, and I asked Ed why he didn't want to talk to the article, and he said, well, no one actually called me up and asked me, so I don't think it's right that he chose not to be quoted. I thought that was a bit much, I've got to be honest. I thought the Nathan Buckley interview was a fantastic interview and full of self-reflection, and the admission that he wasn't the right man to take them forward and was talked out of state, was really forced to go, really, by Graham Wright. But I thought all the great stuff they'd done. Craig Kelly's probably done a great job this year, but he didn't put any of the people in place that have made all the difference. I mean, the coach was already there, the list manager was already there. Darcy Moore had already been earmarked as a leader. So,
Are you saying they're getting ahead of themselves?
No, I'm not, but I thought that's the sort of article you read after a club's won a flag, not after their first final.
So you are saying we're getting ahead of themselves.
What do you
I think it happens on bye rounds, doesn't it?
Yeah. And they're an open footy club these days, much more accountable to their members, and fair enough.
Well, they're open when they choose to be. No, look, good luck to Collingwood. It was an interesting story, I thought.
Flag favourite, whoever wins on Friday night, Collingwood or Melbourne. And Melbourne's success in part hangs on Fritsch, who trained today. The numbers when he plays and kicks goals are overwhelming. Of course, he famously kicked a bag in the grand final. He got 5 in the last game. His stats when he kicks. At 3 or more, he's 62%. It rises to 75, and they win every game where he kicks 5 or 6.
Yeah, and you'd hope kick 6 on grand final day as well, Hutchie, or grand final night. But it's hard to know another player of that size in the competition that's important. So it's normally those big bullocking players, but you'd think he's the most important player in that Melbourne forward line, isn't he?
Yeah, this is what he did last time. So he had the Moore matchup, and they were so conscious every time Moore went to Fritsch to drag him back as deep as you possibly could. They didn't want Moore disrupting Melbourne's entries at around that 50-metre junction, so they want him as deep as they possibly can get, and Fritsch was able to get a hold of him. Now, I've said a number of times this year on this program that Moore's been terrific and offensive, but he is gettable, and regardless of Fritsch's fitness, he'll feel like that's a matchup that they can orchestrate and hopefully have the same success as they did on King's birthday.
In this game, as we'll do it every game, it's time for Lordo's final spotlight again, as we did last year.
Thanks, Hutchie. And I'm going to focus on the Collingwood ruckman who Kane mentioned just earlier, Darcy Cameron. And I don't think he's going as well as he'd like, and he's up against Max Gawn, who can single-handedly just take the game away from him as well as any other player in the competition. So those head-to-head disposals look OK, but have a look at these disposals of Max Gawn, where he's just ragdolling Darcy Cameron. You can't have Max Gawn do that. And he's actually going better now than he was on King's birthday. So I think that's a challenge. That's why Maxton Cox has been used, in my opinion, because they're concerned about the form and the ruck craft of Darcy Cameron.
Going to be vital, Lordo. Who knows what you're going to get from Cozzy Pickett? He may kick 4 and he may light up the MCG, or he might touch the footy 5 times. He's just been far too inconsistent. So he's a bit of a wild card coming in to this game, and his numbers this year suggest that. So he can be great, and then he can be not so. And he's so inconsistent, perhaps one of the most inconsistent players this year. His best is electric. His defensive stuff puts the fear into the opposition, and then offensively he's a real threat, but he's got to bring some consistency, and perhaps he can get going in this final series.
Some would say to you that's what a small forward does, but who would you model? Is it Toby? I know Toby Green's one that's super consistent for a forward, but who would you say is someone he should model himself on to try and find that balance? Yeah,
I think the Giants' 2 small forwards in Bedford and Daniels this year have been that. Bobby Hill, what he has brought for Collingwood, it's not necessarily the consistent numbers, it's the consistent effort, and I think Cozzy fluctuates too much in that. And Nick Dacos will be ready for week 2 according to the Collingwood medicos, albeit week 3 would be a better result with the week's break. Carlton, fiery start to their training in the finals today. Patrick Cripps spoke about the heat at training and also the blue that we saw.
Yeah, the buzz around the place has been massive. The boys are excited, and it was an important session for us today. It was a pretty solid hit out, so it's all new for a lot of us, so we're just embracing it. As you would have seen today, we had a fair crack out there. The boys are ramping up, ready to go, and we train the way we want to play, and when Pito's at his best, he's been a big boy that's throwing his weight around and being aggressive. And I think our brand's that physicality and making opposition feel us.
They have to be physical, Carlton, because they haven't got any finals experience, really. I think there's only been 2 or 3 finals played by Carlton players versus 120 with the Sydney Swans. And I'm wrapped for Patrick Cripps. I think he's their best player. He's their most important player. But it's taken him 8 seasons to get to 2022, where he has a positive win-loss. And then this year, where it's been out of the box for Carlton in the second half of the year. So Sydney will try and stop him, I think. If you can, you're a fair way home to beating Carlton. He's their most important player.
And one Sydney player seems to have taken some sort of notice of what you said about him last week. Let's revisit your comments on Isaac Heaney last week.
I'm putting the spotlight on Isaac Heaney for this final Friday night against Carlton. He's a good player, but unless you stand up in finals, you're not a great player.
So you're putting it on him?
I am. I'm putting it on him that when the heat is on, can he stand up? And I've seen him stand up in big games, but not quite on the biggest of all.
And Isaac Heaney said he doesn't miss much. It is what it is, and he can think what he thinks. I'll use it as fuel to show him and prove him wrong. What did you think of that?
Well, he's a proud man, and he has played some good finals, but a couple of years ago. But I've looked at it. Obviously, there's his disposals, Caro, in last year's 3 finals. So 8 disposals, 1, 16 and 1, and he had a poor grand final. So
he did.
He needs to go better.
That's the exact response you would have expected.
Yeah, you would
hope from him.
Yeah, he's a quality, high quality player.
Yep.
And I'm worried about their tall forwards in McLean, Amadi, and also McDonald. So he and Papley have to play really well to win this game.
Which sets up the final spotlight on this one, and you can't look any further for this game than the midfield. Essentially, we have the best midfield of the year, and that's the Blues, #1 scoring team from stoppage in the comp. You're seeing their numbers there. They're all green versus Sydney's midfield, and for whatever reason, I don't know why that is the case for Sydney. It's a major issue for them because it's not personnel related. Parker, Rowbottom, Papley, Goulden, Heaney, when he's gone in there, are all excellent players in their own right, but it hasn't functioned, and Mills there. So Mills didn't play this day. Hutchie, this is round 11 where Heaney did the job on Cripps. I don't suspect that will happen again. I think they need Heaney in the front half, to Lordo's point.
So what happens then?
Well, I think Mills gets the job on Patrick Cripps, but he's shown that he's vulnerable not only when someone goes to him at stages this year, but also you can expose him away from that and you can get off him, which was the theory there with Heaney. They cancelled each other out this night. They had 19 disposals each. But can Sydney's midfield produce a performance worthy of a finals game?
And the spotlight at Carlton goes on also to Harry Mackay. I think too much falls on Curnow. So Curnow, I thought, was well held in this game. He's kicked 73 goals for the year, or whatever it is, 76, Charlie Curnow. And the next best is 20-odd with Mackay. So he has to produce. Otherwise, you've got guys like Rampy and McCartney will just lay off. So I just wanted to show here how the lack of confidence he had in this game in the last round. So it's sad actually to see. He's just got to launch for his marks nice and early.
Stakes a little bit higher for Sydney than Carlton, given where they've both come from coming into the season?
Probably on the back of what happened last year.
Oh, come on. They've had so many injuries this year. It's they look like we're going to make finals at all. Carlton are the ones who expected to maybe make a challenge for a prelim.
All right. So you
Not
think
Sydney.
the pressure's on Carlton?
Oh, absolutely it is.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. Well, St Kilda's build-up with the Giants has felt a bit more low-key and off-Broadway, but Caro and Kane, this promises to be a pretty good crowd. And
65,000 is an extraordinary number of tickets already sold, and it could get bigger. I mean, that's a big... Given that there was talk to hold it at Marvel Stadium, which clearly couldn't fit them in.
And it'll be a big crowd for the Giants to play in front of. And it's credit to Kingsley, who set this up in the club in the off-season last year.
Yeah, I thought Jason McCartney and his team, Hutchie, had an excellent off-season. This is why the three of us, Lordo and Hutchie, we love the trade period, because this is what it can deliver. Now, at the time, the talk was, look at everything that they've lost. Taranto, Hopper, good players, Hill hurts, Bruin was a first-round pick, and the picks that they gave up. But in essence, they did exceptionally well. You free up the salary cap space for Taranto and Hopper. That hasn't hurt them because Green and Callaghan have stepped up. You get some great picks in. Eventually, you turn Hopper into pick 6. They got Bedford for nothing at all, pick 44, I think it was in the end. So those moves that they made and the salary cap room that they've created has led them to be in a final series that none of us expected.
For all their
they will
flaws,
miss him. They'll miss him if they don't have him on the weekend.
He's out.
Well, the Giants are considering an appeal, Matthew. They've got till midday tomorrow. They had to wait until today for this case to be heard. Extraordinarily weird by the AFL. I think they said to the Giants they had to do it by last Tuesday, like 6 days ago, and if they didn't do it by then, both the AFL senior councils were on leave and wouldn't be around until today. So the Giants had to wait until today. They seemed pretty shocked that he didn't get off. They thought to miss a final for what he did was a bit ridiculous. I don't know what you think, Kane.
I agree.
So they're looking at it in Peel because they'll miss him on the weekend.
The Saints mids have got to be able to keep step, don't they?
Yeah, and we interviewed Ross Lyon on Footy Classified on Wednesday night. And you can see that's the area they want to bolster their midfield over this off-season, and this is the reason. You look at the Giants' midfield, and that's obviously Tom Green, who dominates that area with Canelio, Kelly, Ward, and then you've got versus Steele, who hasn't been in the best of form. Crouch has had a wonderful year, and then it drops a fair bit to those next batch of players. Windhager and a few others are trying to come through. So that is the challenge for St Kilda on Saturday.
Two intriguing forwards, key forwards with different stories of the final spotlight in this game.
Yeah, it is, Hutchie. I'm looking at Max King, and it may be a little bit harsh because of the interruptions that he's had this year. Didn't play in round 24, so he's well rested. I feel like he's got to kick 4+ for them to win. Their issue is not defensively for the Saints, it's their scoring. When he kicks 4+ since the start of 2022, he's 6-2, and this is the vision from round 10 when he'd come back in after that shoulder injury where he did kick 4. Now, Taylor didn't play this game. You can see him ragdolling Buckley there, who's a better player now than what he was halfway through the year, but if Taylor doesn't play, a terrific opportunity for Max King to kick a bag, and when he does, the Saints don't lose.
And I think Ross Lyon, Kane, will make it a low-scoring game. That's what he does, and that's what he does at his best. I know they've tried to score more frequently this year, but it hasn't quite happened. But Jesse Hogan...
most intriguing player in the comp.
He's an intriguing player, but this is the last time he played on Callum Wilkie. So Callum Wilkie just was fantastic. And... I want to see how much he wants to dig in, because Wilkie can wear you down, Kane.
I want to ask you whether Wilkie goes to Toby Green and not Hogan, Lordo, and what you would do in that situation, because stop Toby Green, stop the Giants, essentially.
Yeah, I thought that would be the case, but being around Ross long enough, it's going to be Jimmy Webster will be the first.
If he's watching right now, Jesse Hogan, how should he play Wilkie differently?
I think Wilkie nudges you under the footy a fair bit, so you can't get set. Leo Barry was one player when I used to play, he'd want back position and just smash you under the footy. So some backmen just want to do that all the time. So just keep changing positions up. And Jesse's one of the great runners. He was drafted pick 1 because he's one of the great endurance runners. He's got to try and run Wilkie off his feet.
And Caro, Chris Fagan's another intriguing character coming into this final series. He started the year with, in the darkest of waters, he couldn't leave his home, as he told the Herald Sun on the weekend, who plotted his path from racism claims with he and his wife, and it's a wonderful read in the Herald Sun, to be fair, all the way through until sitting down in the break, doing an interview a week out, which was timed for today. He's on television tonight as well. Wanted to clear the air ahead of the finals. Yeah,
look, I mean, it was a very good piece. I mean, we've all written about the not leaving home in the nighttime stuff, and that has been a terrible situation that befell Chris Fagan. I mean, I make the coach for him as one of the contenders for Coach of the Year. Last week he went past, in the last home and away round, he went past Chris Scott as a coach with the most wins over the last 5 years, the best win-loss ratio of any coach in the AFL over the last 5 years.
Is he the coach under the most pressure in this finals?
I think they need to make the grand final. They definitely think they need to make the grand final.
That's your pass mark, grand final? What about you?
Well, I think, I don't know, because you don't get many more better opportunities to win a grand final, Hutchie, than this one. So you don't get happy that you've made a grand final. You would if you've come from nowhere, but they've been banging on the door for years and years and years to win.
So for you, it's to win it?
To win it, yeah. I think so. I think what a great opportunity it is for them.
Well, I think they would say to win it. I mean, they haven't made a grand final yet for 3 of the last 4 years of top 4 finishes. You're right. They need to get to the top 2 this time. And I guess once you're there, we've seen what they can do on the MCG. We saw some of the form against Melbourne. Some of the best footy I've seen them play, even though they didn't win. So they certainly can win it.
And these are the numbers, Cara, and why you are saying he may be the best coach at the moment for what they've done. So their team's defence has gone through the roof, and I've never trusted them. We've all known the offensive assets that they've got, but they haven't quite been good enough defensively, and now that is as good as any team in the comp, in my opinion. So it's all there for Brisbane. Their injury list is good and healthy, so it's a wonderful opportunity.
And Kane, you identified Lachie Neale's record as your final spotlight here.
So he's upset, Lachie Neale, that Port Adelaide didn't acknowledge him in his draft year. He's a South Australian, and only the Crows of the South Australian club that interviewed him and showed any interest. And ever since then, He has got
Keeps
one
a long
of...
chip on his shoulder.
And I love it. I absolutely love it because he's got one of the best individual records against any team, and that dates back to Fremantle and then to Brisbane. Look at his numbers against Port Adelaide, so I know how concerned they are about him. They have been in the past, but they've been unable to stop it. So Willem Drew will start there and get the job, but Lachie Neale's record against Port Adelaide is one of the best we've seen in the game.
Before I go to my Port player, Kane, do you think Scotty Lycett will be on an AFL list next year?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, what an opportunity it is then if he's bowing out. He's a premiership player at West Coast, and now he gets a chance with the Port Adelaide club before most likely Grundy comes in. But he's up against McInerney. I know he has gone after Max Gawn in the past, and he has a great record against Max Gawn. Well, if he's physically capable, just get angry, get nasty like big ruckmen need to be, because this is their chance. If he can get the ball down to Rosie, Butters and Horne-Francis, the blistering pace of Port Adelaide is where they can win that game against Brisbane.
Who's your tip?
It's Brisbane up at the Gabba.
Yeah, Brisbane win that one.
Yeah, I'm going for Port.
Hey.
Just to be different.
So you
No,
don't,
but I
not a
think
believer
Port-
in the Lions in there?
I am a big believer in them, but I think Port are really going to be the one upset game this weekend.